all 32 fan bases want Cam Skattebo. Like every single one is going to say like, yeah, I want that guy in round 3. I want this guy in round 4.
All City NFL analyst Fran Duffy joining the program. Fran, how we doing? You jet lagged yet?
Not quite. I will say, like, haven't unpacked the bag. Literally walked in the hotel about 5 minutes ago. So we got in under the gun, but I'm excited to jump on with you guys.
Yeah, Fran, we're excited to tap into your insight. You've already churned out so many prospect breakdowns that you're going to be able to find over at gophnx.com and our, of course, so many different sites under the All City umbrella. 150, 200. How many prospects are you deep right now?
We're like north of 150, shy of 200. So we'll get there. It's going to be a crazy couple of weeks, and then obviously we got the combine right around the corner, and so things are certainly going to be picking up for sure.
What's the best player on the surface at the Shrine Bowl this week, regardless of position? If you had to say like a guy who has a chance to really help himself this week, maybe elevate himself to like a day 2 pick, who would you point out?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Johnny, because I think when you look at a number of players that are down here, there are potential first-round picks that are here. The question that we won't know until we take the field on Saturday is how many of these guys are going to practice, right? Like Trey Harris, the receiver from Ole Miss, he's injured, so he's not practicing. Savon Revel, this is a guy, a corner from ECU. I had in my first-round mock draft. I had him in the top 20. He's here. He's coming off an ACL. He's not practicing. Shedeur Sanders, so the quarterback from Colorado, potential top 5 pick. He's here. Is he going to throw? I don't think so. And so now it's just a matter of like, all right, who is actually going to be taking the field? The guy that I would keep an eye on certainly is the nose tackle from Michigan, Kenneth Grant. Now, he was announced for the Shrine Bowl, a true junior. That is a new rule here starting about a year ago where underclassmen can participate in these all-star games. And so Kenneth Grant from Michigan, this is a guy that has been just a one-year starter. He was on that national championship defense in 2023, but this was his first year as a starter. All kinds of traits, guys. He would be a player certainly that would fit down there in Arizona. But I think when you look at just the overall skill set and the traits there, there's a lot to dream on with Kenneth Grant.
Yeah, maybe inform our audience a little bit of your background, because you do have an immense amount of familiarity with Jonathan Gannon, and I'm sure Nick Rawlis with your time covering the Eagles.
Yeah, so I just joined All City this summer, but the previous 14 seasons worked with the Philadelphia Eagles and did all kinds of content with PhiladelphiaEagles.com, a lot of draft stuff, league-wide. I've been looking at all 32 teams for years now. And so it was there for the last 14 years. The 5 years previous was working with the Temple football team, and that's really where I kind of cut my teeth, learning how to break down film, working with coaches and players every single day. So that's kind of my background, I would say, in football. But yeah, I was there certainly through Jonathan Gannon's 2 years that he was there in Philadelphia in 2021, 2022. Nick Rawlis there as the linebackers coach as well. So yeah, don't have I don't want to say I know exactly the type of player, but I got a pretty good sense. Weekly press conferences with JG, you definitely start to pick things up in terms of the types of players that he likes, and I think that too the track record over these last couple of years kind of speaks for itself. There's a nice little profile that is being generated here in terms of the types of players. And Bo, you mentioned, I mean, you had Rabbit come from the Shrine Bowl last year, but a third of their picks under Ossenfort and under JG have come from the Shrine Bowl. I was just looking at the list before I jumped on. A number of players. Obviously, Tip Ryman last year was a day 2 pick, but he was at the Shrine Bowl. You have Taylor Demerson, Xavier Thomas, Tawan Palmer, John Gaines, Kytrell Clark, and Dante Stills all were at the Shrine Bowl. So a third of their picks, I would say, of any fan base in the NFL, the Cardinals fan base should be paying attention to who are the standout players down here at the Star in Dallas this week.
Yeah, everybody but Tip Ryman, a day 3 pick. So again, tap in on Saturday with Shrine Bowl. Let's look ahead, if I could, Fran, to next week and the Senior Bowl, which you will be at in Mobile. Yep. And you mentioned Jonathan Gannon, his type. The Cardinals need pass rushers. Thankfully, this is year to grab one. I look at a guy like Mike Green from a small school, Marshall, and that does give me some concern. But, Quinyon Mitchell, small school last year, dominated the Senior Bowl. Now could be en route to winning Defensive Rookie of the Year or contending for it. Like, why should Cardinal fans feel good about, after taking Zaven Collins out of Tulsa a couple years ago at pick 16 and not really panning out to what you want as a first rounder? What, in your opinion, makes Mike Green worth that investment, albeit from a small school?
Well, the first thing you want to see from a small school player is dominating that level of competition. And, Mike Green comes out this year, his first year as a starter with the Thundering Herd, 35 hurries, 3 forced fumbles, 17 sacks, 23 TFLs. When you look at that stat line alone, I mean, he's stuffing the stat sheet in a number of ways. He was extremely, extremely productive in that lone year as a starter. I think when you look at the way that he's able to impact the game, he's a solid run defender, and obviously we talk about the pass rush productivity. To me, one of the things that this Arizona staff will like about Mike Green, this guy never stops going. He plays extremely hard. The rush is never over with him. So I think when you look at the way that he plays, I think it fits very well with that hits principle, the things that JG likes to harp on in terms of that play intensity. I think that play personality will mesh in well with what JG and Nick Rallis have going there defensively in the desert.
Fran, we talked about all the research you've already put into this draft class, and let's talk about the Cardinals and where they're selecting the first round, 16th overall. Some drafts, you can be picking 16, and because of the quarterback class or whatever variables go into it, teams are picking a guy that's going to be an impact maker. Do you see that this draft has enough depth to where 16 that the Cardinals are going to get somebody that's going to kind of present himself between now and draft night that Cardinals fans are going to be really excited about and can make an impact as early as the 2025 season?
Yeah, I would say honestly that the Cardinals fans should be happy with where they're at. It's the 16th spot is a nice spot in this first round, because honestly, if you're picking higher than that, there's not a lot of difference between the players that are going to be going 7, 8, 9 versus 16 in this class. I think at the very top, this class is really lacking in terms of that true blue chip talent. But as you start getting into the middle stages of round one, you start getting into that part of the draft, I think it starts to level out and it's more what you would expect. And so I think there will be a lot of options. Honestly, this is going to be a very weird first round of the draft. Obviously, we'll get wind of, the players that a lot of people are talking about as we get into late April. But I think the big thing is that there's a good possibility this is one of those years where a player goes 8 overall. I remember back when like Tyson Alualu went in the first round of the Jacksonville Jaguars in the top 10. Everyone's like, whoa, what's going on here? The Buffalo Bills taking Dante Whitner at 8 overall, and people did not expect that. I think this could be a draft where you start to see that those surprise names, going off the board, just because there's a lot of ambiguity right now in terms of who's going to be those top 15, top 20 type of selections. That's why the Senior Bowl is going to be huge next week, because when you talk about the defensive line and edge rush, and that obviously that's a position that's at the forefront of Arizona Cardinals fans' minds. It's going to be a great group next week down in Mobile, working in the trenches, in one-on-ones, defensive line versus offensive line. Those kind of things could be a really good tiebreaker for a number of those players.
Common denominator I feel like I hear with this class, Fran, number one, it's got a great line of scrimmage players on both sides of the ball. Number two, this quarterback class is subpar, right? Yep. But then I do feel like the closer we get to draft season, it's like how many quarterbacks are going to go in the first round? How many teams are going to force a selection? And could this be, the year like when Kenny Pickett was the first quarterback drafted in the 20s? Give me your assessment of this group, because I think Cardinals aren't going to take one in the first round. But I hearken back to when you were in Philadelphia and they had Carson Wentz and they couldn't break through that ceiling, and he got hurt and he was drafted by a prior regime. And then they took Jalen Hurts in the second and it blew everybody's mind. Is there a player maybe like that that could fall coincidentally to the Cardinals maybe in the second round where teams might be saying, hey, that could be the heir apparent to Kyler Murray?
Yeah, I think that's certainly possible. I think when you look at this group, I think that this group overall is better than that Kenny Pickett class, the Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder group. I think it is better than that class overall. I do think that the demand outweighs the supply as we sit here in mid-January. But I think when you look at next week, Jalen Milroe, the quarterback from Alabama, he is a player certainly that can help himself and kind of boost himself into that first round conversation. And there are a number of other players that, down there when you're looking at Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, another guy, Tyler Shuck from Louisville, is a player that I really like on film. I think he's got next level potential. And so there are a couple players I think that can play their way and improve their stock potentially into round one or into the middle stages of day two, Johnny. So I think, if we're talking about a pure day two pick, I guess right now is that Milroe is there as we sit here and could play his way into a higher slot. And then Tyler Shuck would be the guy that I would say, okay, maybe he's able to play his way into that day 2 range. And as long as the big thing with him is going to be the medical, because he's a 6th or 7th year senior.
Yeah, isn't he like 25?
Yeah, he came into Oregon as Justin Herbert's backup, and Justin Herbert was still there. So we're talking, this guy's been in college for a while, but his film was very good this year. And obviously, look, when you're looking at Bo Nix coming out of college, he was an older player. We're seeing this more and more. Jaden Daniels, obviously, a lot of these guys go back for that extra year. They're 5th and 6th year guys. Michael Penix, and the NFL is saying, okay, you put in those times, you put in those hours. We're feeling a little bit more comfortable taking you a little bit earlier than maybe we were 4 or 5 years ago.
Last year was such a big draft for this team. 2 first-rounders, 12 picks overall, 7 in the top 100. Just to kind of get it in a sense, because we're going to get into the weeds with you here throughout the draft season and have some conversation about this year's prospects. But as you evaluate Monty Ossenfort, he's had 21 picks in his first 2 seasons. How do you feel about Monty Ossenfort as far as the general manager and his feel for the draft? And where do you think maybe he can improve in his 3rd draft?
Yeah, I think that, one of the things that I love studying, guys, is just looking at decision makers and their process. You start to get a sense of like what I was talking about earlier, the type of player that they like to trend towards, right? And so, everybody's got types, and look, you can only take one player at a time. And so it doesn't tell you everything, because one thing I've learned, being in this business now for almost 2 decades, is that when a draft choice is made, it's very rare that, this was the GM's pick or this was the head coach's pick. Teams will say like, hey, this was an organizational pick. Very often that is the case, because you need everybody. If they can't get on the same page, there's often a lot of compromise made with a lot of these types of selections. But at the end of the day, when I look at Monty Ossenfort, I like the type of player that they go to. I like the gambles that they do take. I look at Marvin Harrison Jr. It was kind of an easy evaluation from that standpoint. But I think, even Paris Johnson, this was a player that when I looked at him coming out of Ohio State, I said, this is a guy that had all the athletic traits. Maybe the film wasn't quite there, but you loved the character and you loved the athleticism and the ability there. All right, let's coach this guy up. And that's a gamble I think that's worth taking. And I think when you start looking at some of these other players that they've taken, you look at Max Melton, you look at, Isaiah Adams was a player that I was high on coming out last year. Tip Ryman, you start betting on some of these Garrett Williams was a guy, guys, he was a top 30 player for me when he was coming out of Syracuse a few years ago. Obviously the injury was a big part of the reason why he fell to day 2. But, when I start looking at BJ Ojulari and Michael Wilson and Tip Ryman, you start saying, okay, these are athletic players that have high character. So there's the high floor with the potential for the high ceiling. I like those kind of gambles personally. Not every single one has worked out up to this point, but I do like the overall profile for what Monty Ossenfort and what Jonathan Gannon have gone for.
You know what? I think I found another player that fits that criteria. High floor, high character. He happens to play edge rusher for Ohio State University. Jack Sawyer, give me your 30-second scouted report, because he's a topic of discussion on this show. Cardinals have used back-to-back first-round picks, Fran, on Ohio State players. They have a pipeline there. They feel comfortable there with Ryan Day and his team, and they need an edge rusher, and Ohio State's got a couple of them this year. Do you feel like Jack Sawyer right now is worth a first-round pick?
I would say when I look at this entire edge rush group, I think that he's probably on the outside looking in when it comes to the first round. Obviously, look, he is like the heart and soul of that defense. He plays extremely hard. His play strength, that is his best physical trait. That's what I would call his trump card. When you look at his projection to the NFL, he's got solid size, 6'4", 260 pounds. His arm length, that's going to come into question, I think, once we get to the combine. He's not supposed to be at the Senior Bowl next week, so we're not going to be able to see him up close until Indy. But I think when you look at Jack Sawyer, he definitely plays the way that JG wants. I just think that he'll probably be a step below what you want from a physical standpoint stepping into the first round. I think once you start getting into day 2, then it's more likely. But there are a number of other players I think that just they've got the edge on them when it comes to like those athletic traits that get you drafted that high.
It's interesting. Johnny's a big Jack Sawyer guy. I'm looking for a little bit more upside. So one last thing I want to sneak in, Fran. because it's such people around here are Skattebo crazy. They love Scat. Just your initial thoughts on Cam Skattebo and where he fits as far as his running back class. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I was on with the guys at CHGO last week. They all want him, and I made the joke.
No,
I said
that's not allowed. We don't like that. I don't want that.
Well, I said I was like all 32 fan bases want Cam Skattebo. Like every single one is going to say like, yeah, I want that guy in round 3. I want this guy in round 4. I think when you look at his skill set, 5'11", 215, and a lot of people, there's all kinds of comparisons being thrown out, when it comes to him. People say Peyton Hillis and, James Conner. I've seen like Brian Leonard, the former Rutgers, running back who went in the second round. The thing that I caution those comps with, Peyton Hillis, he was 6'1", 240. James Conner was 6'1", 233. And Cam Skattebo is listed 5'11", 215. So we're talking like a difference of a couple inches and like 20, 30 pounds. I think that he has maximized everything. He is so strong. I love his balance. Look, there are athletic limitations that were the reason why he was a 0-star recruit coming out of high school, right? And why he went to Sacramento State as opposed to going FBS or even Group of 5 coming out of high school. But you love the productivity. You love the versatility. You love the football character. I do think that he fits what JG and those guys would want. So if you want a great story of him being able to stay home, and play in that state, I think that absolutely would make sense. I think when you look at the versatility as a pass catcher, he's been so productive there, in that area. That was honestly a guy. Honestly, we'll keep it in the All City family. As I was watching that bowl game, I said, man, the Denver Broncos would love Cam Scott like that. To me, like Peyton Hillis or Taysom Hill is like a perfect A-to-A comparison there for Sean Payton. And so I think when you look at Cam Skattebo, there's a lot to like there. But I do worry what that athletic limitations are. And then at that size, comparing him to some of those other backs, some of those other contemporaries, I think is a little tricky.
I feel so bad because Bo, we're gonna bring Fran on, and he's got tremendous insight, obviously, and he wants to talk about these top tier prospects, and we're just getting gross with some of our favorites here. On
please keep those rolling because that's what I want to talk about these guys.
Yeah,
we're having Fran. He has to like pick a winner between you and I's dumb battles that we have on this show on a daily basis.
We're fired up, Fran, to welcome you to our team. We thrive here in draft season, mainly because that's the highlight of our year for Cardinal fans. But we're getting closer thanks to Monty Ossenfort, and we're getting smarter thanks to our guy, Fran Duffy. Check out his work at F Duffy NFL. He's going to be covering the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl back-to-back weeks. Fran, we appreciate you, my guy, and keep us posted. The ear on the ground this week at the Shrine Bowl.
Sounds good, guys. So we'll talk again soon.